Hi, this is Dr. Will Tuttle, author of The World Peace Diet, and I'm delighted to be joined on this call with two remarkable people, Don Lester and David Parker. They are the authors of a relatively new book out, which is entitled What Really Makes You Ill? Not a great title. What Really Makes You Ill? Why Everything You Thought You Knew About Disease is Wrong. And it's really based, I think, on this idea from the groundbreaking research by the philosopher of science Thomas Kuhn back in the 1950s, who wrote that science moves in paradigm shifts, and that most advances to science come not from people who are immersed in science, but very often from people from other disciplines in science or from young people, because people tend to get trapped in their paradigms and the patterns of thinking. And so these two people, Don has a background as an accountant, and David has a background as an engineer. And so these are backgrounds that really have helped them very well because they're based on simply on logic and rationality and just following the evidence. They've been unencumbered by any dogmas, having been trained in medicine and so forth. So they've written a very big book, and I'd like to go ahead and just get started here. So let's welcome Don and David to our show. Can you hold up to your book and show us
Sure.
what you've done here?
Okay, I don't.
Wow,
So
what a big book!
See, that's
Right.
It's quite a big book.
Yes.
It's nearly 800 pages and 40 pages of references. So it's quite a lot of citations there that people can see where we've got the information from.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that it's so well referenced. Now, 800 pages is a huge amount of information, and we only have a few minutes, relatively speaking, here. So I'd love to just go ahead and jump in. Can you please just inform all of us, what are some of the main points that you think are so important for people to be aware of, especially now?
Okay. Well, I think the main point really is the germ theory itself, because everyone, and that was including us until we started studying it over this 10-year period of research to bring this book into fruition. And we'd always been brought up that germs were the enemy, whether it was bacteria or viruses, the main ones, and that the vast majority of diseases were caused by one or the other of these germs. And so that's what we thought, the same as everyone else. And but certain things triggered questions in our minds during the course of writing another book, a little book about the nature of reality, large subject. But in that, we had to do some research on illness and viruses in particular. And that's what opened the tin of worms for us. The more we looked into it, we realized there was some big questions. And one of the very first diseases, so-called, that we looked at was HIV/AIDS, because that had been sort of a big scare factor in everyone's life in the early 80s. And of course, we were quite shocked to see that there was a big controversy about it as to quite what the cause was. And there was basically two camps, one that believed that there was this virus which had been discovered, and others that were saying, no, that's not true. So we thought, well, that's the first thing we started researching, because we couldn't believe this. And of course, we found that actually, no, there has been no virus that's been isolated and proved to cause AIDS. And the more we looked into it, the more we saw that there was much more logical and rational reasons as to what these symptoms and illnesses were, none of which were to do with any germs whatsoever. It was all about lifestyle and heavy drug use, particularly poppers, and complete with lots of high doses of antibiotics. So without going into that, that's quite a long story on its own. We do cover it in depth in the book for anyone who's interested in the history of what that was all about. But that was the first big shock to us. And so we literally, Dawn and I said, crikey, if they could be so wrong about a major thing like that, what else could they be wrong about? And that's really what started it off. And it was literally rabbit hole story. The deeper we went, the further we found the hole was. So that's
Right.
how it started, really.
Right, right.
Okay.
So that's fascinating, and of course, I want to inform everyone that Don and David are vegans, and that's a very logical, rational thing when you realize that disease is really caused, as you're saying, not so much by viruses and bacteria, but by, like you said, lifestyle, which is nutrition, which is drug use, which is a lot to do, I think, with our thoughts and feelings and our relationships and the way we're living our lives in general. So this is, of course, very important for us today, I think, with the whole thing with the pandemics that are arising, in this particular one now. And people are thinking that we need to have a vaccine or wear masks or social distance and so forth in order to be healthy. And what you're saying is something quite different, I think. What
Absolutely.
would you say?
Yeah.
So what would be your advice to people now? The best thing we can do in the face of the situations we're facing right now?
Well, we would like to think that it's very important for people to do a little bit of research. Unfortunately, people are not going to get answers about their health and what's the best way, what's the best diet, what's the best way to live, what's really going off with this so-called pandemic. Unfortunately, they're not going to get any of that information, correct information, from the mainstream media or the governments, unfortunately, or even the medical establishment, you know, the three main places that anyone would expect to be able to go to get answers. And unfortunately, those three places are actually giving disinformation. So it's worse than not getting the right information. They're actually getting the wrong information. But of course, people don't realize this. They trust their government, they trust the medical establishment, as we did, and they trust the
Right,
media. In the UK, we've got the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation,
right,
and everyone thinks, you know, it's a paragon of virtue and everything they say is absolutely true. But you know, we've researched that and we realise that's not the case at all. They're a propaganda machine and just give out the words of the government. So it's looking to alternative platforms like your own and or like our book is the only way that people can start to get to the truth and realise what is the best way to live, what is the best diet, and we make no bones about recommending a plant-based diet, a vegan diet, and for no other reason that our research has shown that's actually the best way to live because
right,
you're the most healthy. I mean, obviously, there's ethical reasons as well that people can go into, the way sort of factory farming and animals are treated, and you know, some of that's quite disgusting and very distressing if people look into it. But from just if they just want to look at the health side, you know, plant-based diet, organic wherever possible, you know, that is by far the most nutritious way to live and will eliminate many sickness symptoms at least that people have. Just
right,
changing diet. I mean, there are other factors as well, but just changing diet can make a big difference to most people's lives.
right.
And the other major thing that we discovered from our research, you know, going back to your sort of first question, was what we've put as a subtitle: why everything you thought you knew about disease is wrong. Because everyone thinks, or you know, we're told that the information goes out there that there are lots, I mean, thousands and thousands of different diseases, and this simply isn't the case. There are lots of different symptoms that people can experience, and different combinations of symptoms are given different labels of different diseases, but this just is completely wrong because it's the wrong way of looking at how the body actually functions. And the way the body functions is that it's a self-healing, self-regulating organism, and it looks after itself, it heals itself, and one of those ways is by getting rid of toxins of whatever description, whether it's in the food, whether it's in the products that you use on your body in the house, or whether it's just in the environment. So the body has these mechanisms to expel toxins, and through various mechanisms, through the skin, or through the symptoms that people think of as like a cold. They give the label of a cold. It's not. It's like runny nose and fevers. These are the body's efforts to clean itself. It's not a disease. It's a cleansing mechanism. It's a self-healing mechanism. And one of the things not to do is to get some kind of product, whether it's a pharmaceutical or even a so-called kind of natural product, to stop those symptoms, because you're then suppressing the body's own efforts to heal itself, to recover and to restore health. So they are the that was quite a different view. And as you say,
right.
it's a complete paradigm shift in understanding what disease is, how the body works, and it actually can look after itself, but you need to follow certain steps, and that's to, again, as Dave was saying, to feed it properly, and to feed, to nourish the body, to eat food that is nourishing, that supports the body's own systems.
Isn't that a tremendously optimistic and liberating discovery? This is the thing I think that really strikes me, and I think it's hopefully everyone who's listening, that if you can think of the consequences or the ramifications of what Don and David are saying, that there's really not all these different diseases. There's various symptoms, but basically it's the wonderful capacity that we have as beings to heal from the toxins that are coming in. And so if we're having a cold, or it seems to be a flu, or all these other things, it's diabetes or whatever it is, these are ways that our body's trying to heal itself. And if we keep repressing the symptoms, it gets more and more, the body gets more and more stifled, in a sense. It's like caging the body more and more, so it can't do what it would naturally like to do. And so that in many cases, the pharmaceutical industry is providing things that keep us from actually being healthy. And I just resonate with what you're saying so much, because I've stayed away from the medical establishment for about 50 years. I think the last time I really went to the doctor was I think I was just in a teenager. Now I'm almost 70 years old. So it's been like 50 years. And so I think, the whole idea is that we have to, I think if we really want to understand health and disease, we have to change the paradigm and question everything. I mean, I would say literally everything, and realize that we are in many ways creating our experience of our life through our lifestyle, through our thoughts and feelings, and through our food, what's entering the body, like the thoughts and feelings we're having, the food that we're eating. And remember, I think organic is very important. I know I'm sure you could probably talk about this, that
yes,
pesticide, herbicide, fungicide residues, GMOs, all this stuff, it just makes us it's hard on the body. Obviously, these are not things that our bodies are designed for, and we have the same body, going back thousands of years, but there's over 10,000 different drugs and chemicals that have been introduced just in the last 50 years that are toxic and that are used on animals for meat, dairy products, and eggs. So we get those residues from animal foods. They end up in the ocean, they end up in fish, they end up in all the animal foods, they end up in the air and the water. So really, like you're saying, AIDS and many other diseases are just the body working to cleanse itself of all these toxins. And yet, why aren't we not taught this? You want to talk a little bit about that? Like, why is it that we don't learn some of these things? Why don't doctors learn these things? Why don't we hear about this from the government, from the media, those three sources that you talked about? Why do you think that is?
Well, unfortunately, and we've talked to a few doctors about this, because one of the things that we covered in the book, because we asked that same question, why aren't doctors telling us these things?
Right.
Once you find out what their education is in medical school, of course, they have very little training on things like nutrition. So they don't realize the true importance of nutrition, and they certainly don't realize, say, about veganism. They don't realize the importance of a plant-based diet, and they don't realize the importance of organic food. People tend to think it's just some sort of fad, or just
Right.
Organic food, and it costs you more money, but it doesn't really make any difference. Well, it does, of course, because, as you quite rightly said, the normal factory farming methods and agricultural methods using pesticides and insecticides on the soils and GMO crops as well, you're getting fruit and vegetables which may look good in your supermarket, but the nutritional value is not as high, and they can still have residues of the various toxins that have been sprayed on them to keep the mosquitoes off, or the various pests. So at least if you buy organic food, one is the soil is controlled to make sure that it's got all the right minerals and things in it that the plants need to grow properly. You stand a much better chance that it's not been sprayed with anything horrible that is going to then come into your home. But the important thing is that the plants, the body needs minerals and vitamins, of course, but a lot of people think they can just take supplements, but they're not the same. A lot of the supplements that people buy are sort of in an inorganic format, which the body can't assimilate.
Right.
Whereas plants can work with that, so they can change inorganic minerals into organic minerals, which they take up into their systems. And then when they're delivered to you, you eat them and your body can assimilate those minerals. I'm making it simplified, I know, but that's basically why eating plant-based organic food is important. It's not a fad, it's very essential. And more so, I think, in this day and age, where people are subject to a lot more toxins in all directions than they ever were sort of 10, 20, 50 years ago. So it's more important now than ever before, I think, to eat very carefully so that the body has the right nutritional levels to get rid of the toxins that are coming in, that it's being hit with all the time. So very important.
But the other thing is the idea of a vegan diet or vegan lifestyle isn't automatically healthy, because there are a lot of vegan products out there. They're all labelled in the supermarket, vegan. But if you look at the ingredients, they are, they're chemicals, and the chances are that they're not providing your body with the nutrients that it needs. Even though it may say that it's plant-based, but it's still processed. And this is another one of the problems, that if possible, most plant food should be eaten raw, if it's possible to have as many raw as possible, and with the minimal processing. So when you're eating processed vegan products that are made from plant-based materials, that's a very different kind of food than the original natural actual plant. And there's a huge, people say, oh, it's boring. It isn't at all. There is such a huge variety of fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. It's quite easy to have a variety, and they're such beautiful colours. I just don't know how people can look at all these wonderful fruits and vegetables and think it's boring. It's just they're just stunning, so appealing.
And there's lots of even purely vegan cookbooks, so anyone who thinks, well, I have no idea how to start with this, again, it's very easy. You can get a book, and there's lots of very good ones that show you how to start right from scratch.
Right.
Anyone can cook something. But
Right.
What Dawn said is very important, and I'm a little bit suspicious about some of the people that are jumping on the bandwagon, manufacturers I'm talking about now, who are putting out this vegan stuff, so it's all a big deal, that's got vegan written on it, and people are lulled into a false sense of security of thinking, well, I'm eating vegan, so I'm going to be okay. But as Dawn said, if it's not got the nutritional content in it, then you're not going to be okay. And you're going to become ill, and then people are going to say, oh, there you go, and I told you vegan diet's no good for you, you're ill. Well, they never stop to look that it may say vegan on it, but it's not nutritious, and you can't beat going back to basics and, as Dawn said, eating fresh fruit and vegetables and nuts and seeds, of course. That's what you need to do as much as possible. Yes, you can do cooking as well. You do lose some nutritional content when you cook things, of course. So, but you can still eat lots of fruit, which you don't cook. So it's very important to have a varied diet, and we can't stress enough, we do in the book, can't stress enough just how important diet is. That's one of the main factors. We have what we call the 4 factors which we talk about at length in our book, which we have found that all diseases, all illnesses, shall we say, all symptoms, to be correct, stem from. And one of them, of course, is having the correct nutrition. Secondly, is to avoid as much as you can any toxic intake into the body. And this is what you breathe, what you eat, what you drink, basically what you put in and on your body, because there's obviously cosmetics and scrubs and all sorts of things that people use. And some of these things are quite toxic, the contents of them.
Including the hand sanitizers that people are using all over the place, because they are designed to kill. So, that they can't be harmless. So, that's not helping people. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay, because we obviously go at length to explain where all these various toxins come from, just to warn people how easy it is. Even your clothes, which may be surprising to many people, the materials that some clothes are used and the plasticizers and dyes that are in clothes, which can then leach into your body, particularly when you get up and sweat.
The detergents that people use, the laundry detergents, I think are so toxic. I can smell people, 50 yards away, I can smell people coming with their fresh washed laundry. But those are so nutrition and minimizing toxins, healthy nutrition. What are the other two pillars?
The other two are prolonged emotional stress, which of course is a big factor at the moment, because with I'll call it fear-mongering that's been put out by the media and governments to an extent, is keeping people very stressed. People are worried all the time, and they keep changing the rules, or they certainly do in the UK, as to what you should do. So people are in a constant state of stress. For people that have investigated, that's why sort of suicide rates have gone up since this lockdown procedures, we'll call it, that they've done. So this shows, in a very crude way, the level of extra stress that people are under. So that's the third factor. You've got prolonged stress. Now that has a detrimental effect on the body, with the release of free radicals and this sort of thing, which, if they're not cleared out properly, can start to attack tissue, and you can end up with tissue damage, and long term it can result in sort of organ damage as well. And again, that brings us back to nutrition. Without the correct levels of nutrition, the body will not clean out those free radicals properly, because it doesn't have the ability to do it, because nice green vegetables and things like that are full of antioxidants, which people may have heard of, and they sort of will clean out the free radicals, keep the body clean. So that's the third one, is prolonged emotional stress. And the fourth one is our old friend EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies. So those are the four factors. We found a lot of the neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis, a lot of them can be, when you examine the cases, can be tied to being in that sort of an environment. Electromagnetic frequencies are very detrimental to the myelin sheaths on the nerves. Once those myelin sheaths start to break down, you get the symptoms of things like multiple sclerosis. It can affect other things as well. It can cause hemorrhaging, depending on the strength and the duration that you're in some of these fields. So I'm just giving a very brief thumbnail sketch of it now. But those are the four factors that we boiled down to find where all illness symptoms stem from. Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm glad you made a good, strong point about the so-called vegan food that's not necessarily any healthier or much healthier. Maybe it's a little healthier, but like you say, if it comes out of a factory, it's processed, it has added preservatives and coloring agents and artificial chemicals, additives, and all these things. These are toxins, really, to us. So the whole idea, I think, behind your book, it seems like, at least a big part of it, is just understanding more clearly and more deeply the role that toxins play. Like you said, electromagnetic toxins, food-borne toxins, water, air, and emotional, like stress, is another one. These are all part of living today that really is unusual. This right before we started talking, I got an email from a friend who just wrote a new book on mental well-being. And she said that in June, this past month, June of 2020, according to a survey that was done in the United States, 25%, actually, it seems like a very high percentage, 25% of all 18 to 24-year-olds were considering suicide. So that's kind of a shocking thing to think that, you know,
It is
25% of 18 to 24-year-olds, those are the people. I remember when I was 18 or 24, I was alive, I was happy, I had my whole life ahead of me, and it was like this feeling of the adventure's just starting here. And to think that, you know, 25% of young people in that, according to the survey anyway, are considering suicide is, I think, a profound condemnation, I think, in many ways, of those three forces that you mentioned, the media, the medical establishment, and the government, because they don't seem to be helping to educate us in ways that are helpful to work effectively and to have less stress, for example, to have fewer toxins. It seems like they would rather blame any illness on a virus that they can then give a drug, which, and very often, as you know, drugs are also toxic. I mean, any drug or medical, whatever it is, there's always a list of possible side effects, which are quite sobering to look at. So maybe, I know we're getting a little bit toward the end of our time, so if you'd like to maybe talk a little bit about that, just how, you know, maybe why these three are not more forthcoming and more helping us understand these things, and then maybe any closing thoughts would be great.
Okay, well, obviously if we take the medical establishment first, as to why, I know we mentioned earlier that you know, they're just not trained to recognize the things that we've just said. So that's the first thing. They're blindsided. You know, they've spent many years, maybe 4 or 5 years training, and have been well, it's sort of dogma, really. You know, I think you know something about this. Within the training, they have to pass their exams, they have to answer the questions in the way that they're supposed to answer them. Right. You know, they can't do their own independent research and sort of say, well, what's the proof that this virus actually causes? You know, they can't do that, not if they want to pass the exam anyway. So they're blindsided. They're sort of, you know, it's not that they're evil people, you know, we're not trying to paint them out as some sort of monster. You know, they just don't know. And they think that, yes, these things actually do exist, these viruses and bacteria, and these are the enemy. You know, we know they're the enemy because we've been taught it in medical school, and we know that these drugs, which the pharmaceutical companies provide us with, and they get better ones every month, if we prescribe these drugs for this particular symptom, you know, all will be well. We accept that we may not be able to cure it, but we'll be able to mitigate it in some way, and the person will be okay. Well, of course, that's just not the case. And as you quite rightly say, we know that the drugs certainly don't cure anything, and the multiple side effects from them can be quite drastic. And
many drugs have actually been withdrawn from the market. I mean, that's one thing that doesn't get much attention either in the media. And the reason they're withdrawn is because they've been found to have extremely bad side effects, and you know, even causing people's deaths. So they get quietly withdrawn, but very, very quietly. And but the number that have been withdrawn over the past decades is quite astounding, which just goes to one of the other points that we raise questions over the idea that they're safe and effective in the first place. But that's a whole other story. But yeah, it's just, you know, drugs are withdrawn because of these effects that they didn't find in the initial trials.
But so we've got a medical establishment that's blindsided to what the real causes of disease are, and we've got a pharmaceutical company which is mega rich, whose business is to sell drugs through the doctors, really. So there's a partnership there. Sort of an unfortunate alliance, really, where the drug manufacturers just want to sell their drugs, which they make huge amounts of money for, and the doctors are there to prescribe them. And governments, who for the most part, don't know anything about medical science or any science whatsoever, are just pressurized into knee-jerk reactions if suddenly the World Health Organization, as it's done, says there's a pandemic started, there's a new virus on the loose, and you need to stock up on this drug or that vaccine or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And they're pressurized into spending loads of money with the drug companies to stock up on these drugs and vaccines. And I know that may sound oversimplified, but basically that's what happens. And so the World Health Authority puts pressure on the governments and aiding and abetting with the pharmaceutical companies. So there's quite an evil alliance there, which is based on money for the most part. There are other political sides to it, but we probably won't go into that now. So it's very easy to see what's happening. And the people that are major shareholders, shall we say, in those drug companies, also own the industries that and own the media for the most part. There are very few people who own the entire world media. So it's very easy then to have, whether it's radio, television or newspapers, to all be singing the same song, as it were, which is in favour of what the World Health Authority has put out and what the drug companies want to be put out, and everyone else falls in line. So it's, again, I'm oversimplifying it. We do explain this in more detail in the book because we talk about vested interests and the way these things all connect together. But the loser is the public, of course, because they're not being told the truth. In fact, they're being deceived, and they're being given drugs which are toxic to cure something which is not caused by the things that they're told is the cause of it. As Dawn said, all of these drugs are designed to kill either bacterial viruses because they think that's the main thing that's causing the disease. And
or
nothing could be further from the truth.
Right, or to repress the body's natural response to try to heal itself, to repress that, and allow the people to keep doing what they're doing very often. So, it's so interesting. So, just in closing, what has been the response to your new book? I mean, how's it been going? And are you finding that people are interested in this? Some people, or is it so far ahead of its time that people don't know what to think?
Okay, well, we were a little unsure when we launched it because we deliberately gave it a very provocative title. And we sort of half expected that we'd get a lot of flack from that. But I have to say, it's been very well received. I mean, it sells into 13 countries, and we've been approached by a French publisher who is, as we speak, translating it into French to distribute it around the French-speaking countries. So, and for anyone who looks on our website, whatreallymakesyouill.com, they'll see some of the emails that we get sent of people who've praised our book and said that it's really helped them and it's turned around their lives and taken away the fear. Now they know that it's not some rampant virus on the loose that's going to kill their entire family. So we're really pleased about this. And yes, like everyone, there are always some naysayers, who just want to criticize anything. It doesn't matter what you did. But the vast majority of people, it's been very well received. It's done very well, exceeded our expectations. So we're very happy about that. And it gives us a very warm feeling when people write to us and say, this is great, I'm reading it. It's really good. It's helped me a lot. I mean, this is lovely. And we really enjoy receiving those sorts of emails.
Sure.
Yeah, scientists aren't too happy. Or some scientists have contacted us and aren't too happy because we are challenging, like you said at the very beginning, we're challenging their paradigm. So the answer we usually try and give them is to turn the question back on them and say, well, please provide us with the original evidence that this bacterium or this virus causes that disease. Now, I mean, that's not possible. I mean, viruses are not living entities anyway. But with one of the main things we wanted with the book was to, and that's why it's, so large, because we wanted to provide people with as much information as we could so that they can make truly informed decisions for themselves. But we realised that it was not just a simple thing of saying, oh, you need to eat healthily, but we had to show where, like you say, where all the toxins are, so that they can make the informed decision to say, no, I'm going to avoid those toxins. At least I know where some of them are and what I can do about it. So it allows people to take responsibility for some of the or for as many of the decisions about what they put in and on their body. Some toxins they can't avoid, but at least if they know where they are, where they're going to be, where their exposures are going to be, they can minimise their exposures and just take responsibility and make some changes, and if they want to be and remain healthy. So it's giving, as I say, it's giving people the information, or providing people with the information and access to further information through the various reference sources that we've got as well.
We often say to people to lead a healthy life is very easy. It's quite straightforward. There's not a lot of rules, but the rules that there are quite strict. You can't mess about with them. But it's very easy. It's not expensive, but you have to stick to them, so that's basically it. Being healthy is very easy, but you have to stick to the rules, and it's as simple as that. And
right.
We try to explain what those rules are.
Right. These are the natural principles underlying, I think, the basic wisdom that we have not only in our body, but in our mind, which in many ways I think gets hijacked. So it sounds like your book is really in many ways an empowerment vehicle, right? For people who were trained from the time we were little kids to give away our power and say, oh, gosh, I got a cold, I got to go to the doctor. I got this ache. My back hurts. I better go and get something from the doctor. I better trust the authorities. They know, I don't know anything. And really, it's through the research you did, you realize that actually there's already an enormous wisdom of healing already present. And so instead of going along with what I feel anyway is a pretty primitive medical system that we have, if we look at some of the subtleties of the Ayurvedic systems or the Qi, acupuncture, and many other herbal systems, in history or in other cultures, there's an enormous amount of sophistication in many systems. There's sophistication in this system too, in certain ways. But to realize that there's a wisdom in our own bodies that we can begin to access. Can you just say a little bit like your website again, and any other thing that would help people to continue to explore your work? That would be great.
Okay. Our website is whatreallymakesyouill.com. There's quite a bit. We keep putting extra information up there, so there's quite a bit of information, obviously, all the video interviews that we've done, where we talk about our work extensively, so people can watch those. It's all for free. We put up various documents that we write about various things about health, which we put up there so people can read those for free. So I would recommend that people visit our website and have a look. There's a lot of information there. It would be nice if they bought the book as well, of course.
Can you buy the book on the major booksellers online and so forth? Pretty much.
Most of the online booksellers, I've noticed that it's there.
Wonderful.
Whether it's obviously Amazon, of course, you can always get it from Amazon. But I was quite surprised when I saw just how many online booksellers actually you can get it through them. So it's quite easy to get. We do an electronic copy of it through Kindle, which obviously is much cheaper. And
so heavy.
and instantly available, because we know that some people in Australia have had difficulty in getting the hard copy to them, so they tend to just buy the Kindle version, which they get within minutes. So it's within everyone's price range one way or another. And but visit the website first, and people can get quite a lot of information from there. We try, and we keep updating things to try and give people as much information as we can. And we just ask people to remember, only the body can heal itself, and you can either help it or hinder it. And we suggest that you learn the rules for helping it to heal itself.
Wonderful. Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, David Parker and Don Lester. And I know it's a lot of work to write a book. I haven't gone through that myself. And then, of course, after you give birth to the baby, then the real work begins, and then telling the world about your new baby.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that you've done this together, and that you're not only sharing this, but you're living it. I can really see that you're living these teachings,
Yes.
and that's very
Yes.
inspiring. So much love to you both, and appreciation. And I again encourage everyone to look into this more deeply. And we have some great resources here with this new book. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Will.